Hello, hello. Welcome to my first talk that hopefully I will feel inspired enough to keep recording as time and weeks go on. This week, I'd like to discuss the concept of quantum mind. So, I just heard about this recently, and it's a term that describes a certain type of person who energy kind of lives lower in their body space versus in their mind. So when you have a quantum mind, you're more tapped into the subtle energies around you. You feel subtle energy. You bounce back and forth off of it. You read it and you collect data that way. That's how you gain your knowledge. And it does not exist at all in the brain. So when you gather this data, you're not even really aware, and the energy just goes and it becomes an instant thing that you can access. But like the function is not in your head. So you're not like, oh, I need to remember this and remember this, and you're, like reading the data and interpreting it that way. Like some people probably can, I don't, but like um, a person who is more in tune with that energy and accesses it easier would have be considered someone with a quantum mind. So quantum just means so much to everybody. To me, it means that everything is made of energy. So everything, every object, even though it's not moving, is made of energy. And quantum is like even down to the smallest minuscule thing is energy. And we're all communicating and alive in a sense. So the quantum, even space around us, it consists of data and energy. And so um, when you have a quantum mind, you're just tapped into that more. There's nothing like super special about it. It's just comes more natural to you, and it probably explains why some things that you might have difficult things doing, like memorizing things, because you're not really living in your head, which is actually really healthy to not do. Um, when you're more in your body, you tend to not like memorize. Excuse me, my dog. Okay, you're not like really memorizing like super detailed things, but you might remember like the energy of it, or like the first letter of their name, or um, their face, or like how they made you feel, or stuff like that. You might not remember like what they were wearing, or um, what their last name is, like long details like that. So you also might have difficulty communicating complete thoughts. So when you are in this, and when you're tapped into this energy, it's kind of an effort to. It's not like you're not thinking. Like you have thoughts, but like they exist not in like words that. It's almost like you could probably communicate without speaking, and to speak takes energy, and to formulate the words takes energy, and not everybody wants to do that, or it's harder, and so you might have difficulty. You know what you want to say, or you know what you're you know how you're feeling, but it's like to actually make a complete sentence. Sometimes you skip like important things, or it might come out the wrong way that you actually didn't intend it to, so you need to like clarify even further and further, and a lot of people might not understand you, or not even like really take the time, because you're not communicating in their same way, so they just write you off. um, but yeah, and another thing might be like difficult to be around in social settings, because in social settings there's a lot of verbal communication, and when you have a quantum mind, verbal communication is not the most natural thing. And so a lot of times you're like communicating and someone doesn't really even realize you are, or that you're listening, and you might really be a really good listener, because you're good at reading energy, and you're really good at taking it in and exchanging it, and listening is part of that. So some tips for kids, if you have kids that have this type of mind or way of being, I would say, would be one-on-one learning. It's taken me 40 years to realize this about myself, that I need one-on-one learning. Like, I can watch the video over and over and over again and still get it wrong, or like zone out, or need to rewatch it, and I still don't fully grasp it, like I still don't fully understand it. So when you're on one-on-one learning, you are exchanging energy that you don't even realize that you're doing. So there's an energy exchange between you and the other person, and they're collaborating with you, they're working with you, and that's how you collect data. That's how you know things. It's not like you don't know things because you didn't memorize it. You know things because you feel it and you know it. There's a difference. And it might be actually be easier to, once you're tapped into that space, it actually might be easier for you to even recall info, because it's instantaneous in the quantum, because you're accessing data at an instant. You're not like going back in your mind and trying to remember. It's instant. And so one-on-one teaching in person can make such a difference for somebody who has struggle learning or even paying attention in like a group setting or online setting. It's not uncommon to hear that. Like, obviously, I think a lot of people could agree that online isn't the best learning tool for a lot of people, but like especially for this group of people. So yeah, one-on-one learning. And then the last thing I want to talk about is how consciousness rose to the mind. I don't know exactly when or why. I probably know why, but I don't exactly know when it happened. But like, at some point, there was, most of everyone's consciousness was in their heart space or lower. I've even heard in the liver, but that would be something that like I'm still learning about, like consciousness being in other body parts besides the heart and the mind. But definitely in the heart. So when consciousness is in the heart, you hear that all the time. Like you sorry, my dog again. Okay. At some point, consciousness lived in the heart space. So currently, it's in the mind for most people. Consciousness, we think, is in the mind. We think because we think it exists. It exists because we think it, is the phrase. But really, there's thousands, tens of thousands years ago, probably, the consciousness lived in the heart. And at some point, it rose to the mind. So when you hear that, like when people say like you lead with your heart, that means like somebody is doing something because of, the will of their heart, and their consciousness is in their heart. Like the reason is because they're passionate about it, or they feel, like they're making decisions based on their heart versus their mind, okay? And there's a difference. When you base a decision on your mind, it becomes manipulative. And like, maybe not every decision on the mind is, but I feel like I've kind of like went through the energy, and I can't really come up with a scenario where it wouldn't be. But if you know of any, like, leave it in the comments. But when a decision comes from the heart, that means that there's no like personal gain. Like, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do. You're doing it because you like it. You're doing it because it feels good, okay? Number one thing, feels good. And when you make a decision from the mind, it's, what am I going to get out of this? It's, how can I gain from this? And that becomes the driving, if that becomes your driving source of energy, like, that could lead to that leads to where we are now in this world. Like, the consciousness has rose from the heart to the head. And when you have to think about a decision, like to the point where you're like, how is this going to play out? I think there is like a level of that when you're like, like when there's important decisions like business involved. But in day-to-day life, like in the yeah, of course, like how am I going to get there that safe way? Like, is there anything I need to do? Like, check my tires, or if you're going on a long trip. Of course, there's like analytical decisions like that you have to make. But for the most part, like when you're like, I'm going to do this, it's because I want to do it, or it comes from my heart, or I'm doing it for somebody else, or I'm doing it for the best of my family. It's, those types of decisions. And then like the mind can help you and support you when it needs to. But when your primary consciousness lives in your mind, that's where the analytical mind comes in, and that's where like the ruminating thoughts exist, and that's where decisions it's not even like a bad thing, it's just what happened. Consciousness rose to the mind. And we see it play out now in how society is, and how the United, like in general, the West is compared to the East. Because I have never been to India, but I've heard so many people say, like, you go to India, the presence that people have, even when I work with people from India at my work, the nicest, kindest people, like, just super present and not very like manipulative, very trusting, nice people, okay? But when you're trying to like get something out of something, I just think that it can lead to, we've lost that sense of heart, and we can pull it down. You can pull it down. Everybody has this capability to do. It takes like just awareness and to bring it back down to the heart and practice. And that's where like great practices like yoga and meditation and breath work and stuff like that comes into play, because it can pull you back down into your body. It can ground you, so you're not having all this energy in the mind that maybe you don't need. Maybe it's not necessary. Maybe it is for you. There's nothing wrong or right. It's just what's happened. Energy moved from the heart more to the head. And that's all I have to say about that. Let me know your thoughts. Obviously, I could have interpreted things, the way that I communicate things could be a little off and not perfect, but hopefully you get the gist of what I'm trying to say here. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.